So hello for the podcast series of the CoCreativeSex Summit podcast series. I'm super happy today to welcome a special guest that I got to know very well through actually collecting his story for my book, Sex Up Your Life, and just got privy to his amazing life story. And in the process discovered like what an amazing contribution he's being to humanity through really taking on the question of how do we actually have sex in a way that is integrity for both men and for women. And I just love what he's up to. He's, started off his life from a disempowered place as well, like a lot of people that are doing big impact in the world, and really took on his life and transformed it and really discovered. I'm delighted to go in with this with him and sort of look into what are the big things that he had to take on and what he has now to offer to the world. His name is Destin Gerek, and he's just about to publish his own book called The Evolved Masculine, Be the Man the World Needs and the One She Craves. And he just has a collection of really great advice, but amazing experiences that can really support men in becoming like fantastic lovers and meeting women in terms of like their needs and creating something really beautiful in that meeting. Is there anything that I missed in introducing you, Destin?
I could be introduced in a myriad of ways. I appreciate and try not to blush too much with the ways that you express things. We dove in very deep with one another for a pretty lengthy period of time as you drew out story after story after story from my whole life path and journey. And I love seeing what you've developed in the time since. Excited for your own launch, and especially for the Co-Creative Sex Summit.
It's specifically really exciting because actually the person here that you're seeing right in front of your screen is actually going to be flying to Vancouver the 14th, 15th, and 16th, even a little bit before that, for a book signing of his own book on the 12th. But he'll be here available for Vancouverites and anyone who wants to fly in and experience his knowledge and wisdom around sexuality. I know that you've got a practice called The Evolved Masculine, and men have been working with you for years. Tell me just a little bit more about your practice and what kind of work you've been doing with men, and actually at one point in your life with men and women.
Yeah, I even got confused a little bit when you spoke of my practice, because I think of meditation and circulating energy and that when you speak of practice. But because I don't tend to relate to my work in the world quite with that language usually, and it just had me sit with it. I've been building a company and with a business and organization, and I'm making the distinction because my focus is very much on building something that is larger than myself, that the evolved masculine I view as a movement, and something that I'm clearly not, and thank God, not the only one working on and a part of, though I do consider myself a pioneer in this movement. The Evolved Masculine as an organization, as a company, we've been developing and certifying Evolved Masculine coaches and leaders to help support men who recognize there's things to address here. We are being given a massive mirror as men, and particularly with the advent of Me Too, but honestly it started before then and will continue, a big mirror of, maybe some of the programming that we've received, particularly around what it means to be a man, our masculinity, our sexuality, how we relate to women, that some of that programming is kind of flawed, isn't it? And it's having more and more of us introspect and look at what are the aspects of this I actually want to be embodying, and what do I really want? And this does, of course, touch along with my own journey quite well as well. I just was a bit 20 years ahead of the curve, so to speak.
Well, Well, it's really such a timely topic, and it's for many different reasons. On one hand, I think there is a bit of a crisis in identity for a lot of men are trying to figure out, okay, well, that kind of way, what's we're seeing in Me Too, or how this kind of like quote unquote this toxic masculinity is happening. Maybe they've experienced it through their own family systems. Maybe they were like, they saw it close by or whatever, and they've also become a victim of it or whatever. They didn't like it. So they're kind of rejecting that. But there's also a group of men that feel also kind of this loss of identity and frustration towards the feminist movement and things that have kind of, said, in some ways, fuck you, the way you're operating. And they also there's two different ways of being. It could be like, hey, like, okay, we're going to be kind and take care of this. And then there's another way that's kind of like, well, I'm just going to counter react, and it becomes this kind of almost warfare between.
Yeah, sure. People have been speaking about the battle of sexes as long as I've been alive, and longer, really. With this way in which women have been growing and evolving significantly over the past several generations in regards to their relationship to their own identity, their own relationship to power and leadership and roles within society and money, all of that changing so drastically, men have been responding primarily in one of two ways. Now, these are broad generalizations, but two primary ways. One is anger and resentment. It's like a desire, conscious or less conscious, to reassert control and reassert dominance. And the other way is towards collapse and disempowerment. And so a lot of men have been moving in that direction of, I don't want to say the wrong thing. What does she want? Okay, let me just do that. And giving away all of his power in order to just please mommy, archetypally, or just fear of being emotionally, energetically castrated.
Yeah. So go ahead.
So I developed the Evolved Masculine to present a third way, the third way that I was really seeking. And you were speaking of toxic masculinity a minute ago, and I get it. I friggin' get it. I get why a line was drawn in the sand of saying no fucking more. No more. There are things that have been tolerated for too long that will no longer be tolerated. And a naming of the problem and a calling out of a problem, and absolutely necessary. And if we're going to be speaking to and pointing to toxic masculinity, the aspects of our training around masculinity and what it is that are toxic and harmful, we need to simultaneously be offering an alternate solution. And this is what the Evolved Masculine is meant to be. It's like, okay, this way. Man, if you're seeking here, let me shine a light based on a lifetime, 20 years now of actively seeking these solutions myself, making every mistake in the book, and ultimately finding things that work far better, not just for me, but for the thousands of men now that I have worked with. And it's not to say that I have it all figured out. I don't. I'm constantly learning. And I am not the epitome of the Evolved Masculine. The Evolved Masculine is an idea. It's an archetype. It's a symbol, so to speak. It is my North Star that helps guide my path. I fall down, I falter, and it helps me reorient and get back on path. But also, having been following the same North Star for quite a while now, I do get closer and closer.
Yeah. Well, it occurs to me that, when we talk about toxic masculinity, everything, if we're taking a polarity, there's also the counterpart would also be toxic femininity. There's ways of being that two things come together and then we play out a dynamic. And so what I love about what you're doing is you're trying to find, let's be leaders here and find a new way that's actually wholesome and healthy and going forward.
Yeah. The toxic femininity could be its own conversation, not one I'm going to get into right now. I have one chapter out of 54 chapters in my book that kind of focuses on it, titled The Harmful Expressions of the Wounded Feminine.
And as you were mentioning too, like we're, all of us, we have these two polarities within ourselves, and we're wounded in these two polarities because of how things have been going out in the world. So to get out of these paradigms takes creation, takes ideas, takes a new impulse. And that's what really drew me to your work, because I was like, this guy has a pioneering view and is offering something new. And it's not just like saying, okay, we're going to stay small here. It's like, no, we want to really experience what the masculine is. We want to be leaders. We want to be out in the world. We want to be fulfilled and empowered. And we want to be respectful of the polarity that we're with, right?
I think that you spoke to something that's really key, is that for some men, a lot of men, quite honestly, there is a fear that this shift that's occurring means loss.
Right.
Loss of power, loss of self, and a diminishment.
Yeah.
And it does not have to be that way. And I consider my life path living proof.
Yeah.
It can be a path of empowerment, a path of growth and becoming more than you ever knew yourself capable of being and becoming. And that's really what I've tried to lay out in my book, as well as in the talk and presentation that I'm going to be leading at your event.
Well, I think it's so important, because I've been experiencing, just a lot of young men around me sharing with me what they're going through, what they're dealing with. And you can really see there's still a struggle, because, and I know that you can understand this, that men, when they're discovering their sexuality, they're also trying to confirm their masculinity and confirm their strength and their power. And if a woman rejects them, it's horrible and devastating. And so there could be a lot of anger, whatever they've experienced with their own mother, whatever kind of dynamics they've been playing out in their life. They could start adopting other ideologies out there that just perpetuate like a negative thing. And I know that there's some people out there being part of groups that are telling them, okay, well, you have to be a certain way to be a real man, is like this, and don't listen to the women, and you have to be dominant, you have to do this. And so there's all kinds of ideas. And so what I'm really interested in is, how do we get to that win-win? And I know you've been thinking about that. Just a little bit, right?
Yeah, I've spent a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of mistakes on trying to find that win-win. And it's imperfect, but I've come really far in that regards. There's a lot. I mean, what I've come to believe is, despite what some of the loud voices are in our society right now maybe saying, I believe that most men, sorry, my dog is bothered by something. Most men really want to be good men.
Yeah.
They want to love a woman or women and want to do it better. There's just a lot of confusion as to what the hell that means, what that looks like, and a real lack of healthy, positive role models, especially when it comes to masculine sexual expression. And so, like, if you are seeking, you have to find your way through so much noise, so much stuff that, quite honestly, is quite toxic. And the more confused you are, and again, I'll speak from my own life path in that regards, the more confused you are in the moment, more you'll be like, well, I don't know. I mean, that doesn't, that feels a little icky or whatever, but what I'm doing is clearly not working. So maybe that's the thing. Maybe that's right. Mm-hmm. And in many ways, we just continue to perpetuate the very problems as both men and women continue to wound one another more and more, and then react from that wounding towards the next one, and then react from that wounding towards the next one. Yeah. And it's got to stop somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. So could you give me, I know that there was all the pickup artist movement, there might be other movements out there that were actually teaching men to sort of override or find ways of grooming in the women into having sex. And getting what they wanted finally, and then be able to walk away like, hands clean from that situation. And I know you've seen things like that. Can you describe some of the stuff that you've seen that you sort of would like to flag?
Well, things continue to change, like I was really in my deep dive trying to figure out and understand all of this in particularly starting in 2007. And keep in mind, Neil Strauss's the game, the Penetrating the Secret Society of Pickup Artists, came out in 2005. And that had a massive cultural impact and really catalyzed a huge, widespread growth of pickup culture that seemed to put its tentacles throughout male culture. And as a man who I was deep in the tantra communities and worlds at that time. Still, as a man who was exploring sexuality and male-female dynamics and that type of thing, it was all around me. And meanwhile, it was getting far more attention than the tantra world that I was so deep in exploring. And it was like, okay, what's going on over here? Mm-hmm. And I found that, well, one, that community was speaking very directly to a core pain point that so many men hold. Exactly. Which is an overall feeling of confusion and disempowerment in how they relate to and connect to women, and the overall feeling of lack and scarcity when it comes to their sexuality. Mm-hmm. So it was providing a path. Now, it's not necessarily the path that I most agree with, but it was answering a very real question that nobody else was really answering, that our larger society is largely just like, you're on your own, kids. Yeah. Try not to get anyone pregnant or pick up a disease. Right. There's that, and then there's porn. And particularly, again, at that roughly around that same time is when the free porn sites started really becoming a thing and also reaching their tentacles throughout male culture. Mm-hmm. So now suddenly, like, this is where, like, not, again, I have to speak in generalities, but these two forces of pickup culture and porn culture were having a massive impact on male culture, what I'll call male culture. And quite honestly, and I say this in my book, and I've never heard anybody else reference it before, so it may be controversial, I don't think it's a coincidence that these two things directly preceded the Me Too moment.
Yeah, it probably brought it to a degree of like bursting the bubble, because there's a kind of people out there unleashed trying things, like,
and trying. I mean, there are messages. There are messages that permeate through these cultures that in my opinion, encourage date rape. Yeah. Though they would never have seen it that way. Yeah. Because under that mentality and paradigm, it's not rape. It's what you're supposed to do. It's what you're supposed to do as a man. It's what she's really wanting from you. That if she doesn't want it, she will leave. And that is a very poor understanding of trauma, a very poor understanding of women, the feminine. Yes. And that otherwise, our role as men is to just constantly be that driving force. Yeah. If she puts up a blockade in this way, try to go around this way. Puts the block that way, try to go around this way. Mm-hmm. In one form or another, either she gives you a hard no and leaves, or you just keep going. Right. That is a disaster waiting to happen, and quite frankly, I think it's a very disaster that was the
last drop. Yeah. Or the last few drops.
Yeah, because I mean, it's not like we didn't have a problem with date rape and sexual assault prior to the pickup. It's been a problem for a really long time. But I do think that it's not a coincidence.
How do you feel like that? Because that's interesting. I never thought of it being a link between that and the porn culture going kind of viral. Why do you think the porn? To speak a little bit more to that aspect.
Well, first, like, I grew up on porn. It did. Like somewhere around 6 years old, I found my grandfather's porn magazines throughout his house. I mean, this man was a connoisseur, and and from that point forward, I looked forward to trips to the grandparents' house, and and so chances are I played a role in my whole life path and development as well. And then middle school, saw moving images for the first time through VHS tapes. I'm really dating myself through these references. And then at 16 and a half, I had sex with a real live woman for the first time. By that point, I had consumed so many images, but the vast majority of them were still images, magazine pictures, and the vast majority of those were of a solo woman, not in the sexual act and not moving. It's a very different climate today. But even still, that's what I was immersed in prior to my first sexual experience, which of course is going to have some sort of influence or impact on my expectations, my ideas, the things that the way in which I would try to do things.
Yeah.
And again, take that and magnify it 1,000-fold today.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what can you describe a little bit the culture that people are immersed in now? Like, I'm just thinking some of the gamers and then the porn and the gaming, like what do you see as
the truth is I'm less connected to gaming culture. I mostly can study it a little bit from the outside. I'm not immersed in it and haven't been since I was 16 when I discovered sex, by the way. There is a direct connection there.
You're like, hey, 3D, this is way better.
Girlfriend and sex is what pulled me away from video games. Yeah. But we live in a pretty disembodied culture where we spend time like you and I are right now, in front of our computers, in front of a screen, or in front of a television, sitting on a couch, or sitting in a car in one form or another, sitting, not really moving, all energy here, eyes out.
Yeah.
And consuming.
Yeah.
Consuming. That's not where co-creative sex comes from. That's not where like powerful intimacy or intense passion come from. Right. Those are embodied experiences. Right. Those come from getting out of the head, grounding into here. And only from this place of presence can we have that type of intimacy and passion.
Absolutely.
So there's that, and again, having consumed so much, I had to retrain and relearn like how to be in my body,
right?
And how to not have my turn on be something that was almost entirely driven by what I was watching, what I was seeing.
How did you do that?
So one of the things that I teach in the world, and part 3 of my book, is called sexual self-mastery. Sexual self-mastery, which is about learning to connect to your sexual energy as an energy, to feel more in your body, to tune into subtleties in your body, and learn to play with that energy, move that energy, channel that energy. But it also helps release any cultural baggage of sexual shame, guilt, and fear, deepen your sense of presence as a man as you move through the world, make you a better lover overall, and of course the fun marketable things like learn to last as long as you want, experience full body orgasms versus just generally based and even non-ejaculatory energetic orgasms and now multiple orgasms. So there's a whole process that I've developed, but a core part of it is what I call establishing a practice of erotic self-exploration. Erotic self-exploration. I call it that to separate it from your typical masturbation habits.
Right.
Typical masturbation habits are often learned when you live in your parents' home as a teen or younger, and the primary directive is, how do I do this quickly and quietly so I don't get caught? Unfortunately, often those patterns get so ingrained from so many times before you ever leave the parents' household that those patterns are continuing to play out throughout your adult life.
Right.
And chances are, if you're not still living with your parents, those same things are not really what's serving who you are today, what you're really wanting.
I love that imagery. That's like, yeah, it's so true. Like if you've been like trained in your parents' household and there's certain conditions, it's hard to break free of that because it's like so associated with that experience and those
You're
conditions.
training your neurology. You're training your neurology as to what sex is and how to run sexual turn on and pleasure in your body. So
Right.
that I refer to it as a sexual self-mastery training because it is a retraining of your nervous system, a retraining of your physiology, as well as the energetic. I like to play with both like the Western grounded science physiological aspects as well as the Eastern esoteric energetic aspects. I like to think of myself as being bilingual in that way.
Yeah.
Um,
I like that.
and working with both of these perspectives to be able to connect to what is actually going on in here. And by bringing that level of attention, awareness, consciousness to it, along with guidance from somebody who knows what they're doing, uh, you can retrain, you can relearn.
Yeah. Yeah. So this experience then of like really getting into your body, is it something that you do with music or with imagery, or is it just something you are able now to take on yourself and do for yourself? Like, I'm just curious because a lot of men were going to porn to have something outside. So how do you recreate this, like this context for yourself?
I mean, the things that you mentioned are not necessarily the first things I would go to, but yes, they certainly support and help. One, it takes the decision. Like any change, it really takes the like a clear, conscious, a confrontation of okay, so what is the truth of where you are currently?
Yeah.
Part of lesson one is what I call establishing your normal. Like before we get off on a journey, let's just get real with where you are right now. What are your habits and patterns? And I developed this masturbation questionnaire that they take to assess themselves to really recognize, like, oh, what are the habits that are part of my life, and
That's so
what?
useful.
Yeah, and then from there you can see like what aspects of this are actually in support of what I'm wanting, and what aspects aren't.
Yeah. So give me an example of something that would be in support and not in support.
Sure. We'll start with non-support. Not in support is masturbation equals porn, porn equals masturbation. If you're going to touch yourself in some way, it means porn. It has to be porn. And otherwise, basically you've trained your nervous system to need a particular kind of stimulation.
Right.
And it's real, like that the system has been trained in it, but the beautiful thing is it can be retrained. But, and then with that, so often it's one hand on the trackpad or mouse, what have you, and and one hand wrapped around the shaft and searching, clicking around, finding a thing. Well, all energy, all focus is here. Well, it's like this almost mechanical thing happening just on the cock. No other part of the body is given any attention, and none of the awareness is even. Most of the awareness is even in the genitals. It's all here.
Right.
And so, as an example, on the other side of being more supportive, intentionally taking time out that you're specifically allocating for your practice, just like a meditation practice, yoga practice, music practice, sports practice, whatever it is that you're dedicating time to actively explore and improve. Creating the environment, like you said, can certainly help. Music, decor, something that has you feel like you can be in your senses and feel good, rather than like, oh, everything's in shambles and let me just try to tune all that out. Waking up your full body. So instead of all your attention and focus just being, men particularly, we can get really dick focused, which then ends up translating to how we can often be with women, where it's just tits, pussy, ass.
Right.
And learning to just realize that our entire bodies, our entire nervous system, head to toe, are part of our sexual system. And so bringing all of it in, with waking up the body, think of it as like you are waking up every nerve ending of your body and bringing it into the sexual experience, so that when you're experiencing arousal, you're training your body that every nerve ending is part of what should turn on
Yeah.
with that
What I
arousal.
love about some of your work is that, the word sensual, we often don't think back at the root of the word, but sensual is the senses. And we've got, there's 5 senses, and some people talk about 12 senses, depending on what kind of things you consider. But if we just take the 5 basic senses, there's already so much awakening, like if we just listen to music as an example, someone who's a trained musician is going to hear so much more than someone who's never been trained. Someone who's a painter will see colors in a very different way than someone who's never worked with colors, So there's something about, we can actually awaken and enliven all our senses to be much more active in the processes we're involved in. So that's what I'm seeing, is that you're bringing that element in, so that when there's a sexual experience, it goes beyond this one little focus and can become this.
And it makes you such a better lover as well, because a lot of these things I speak of, women have a tendency to more naturally be connected to begin with. Again, I sort of like how we can get very dick focused, and then with that be the same way with her. Women can certainly develop their own unsupportive masturbation habits, without a doubt. But they also tend to
numb themselves and not have a practice.
That's true too. They also tend towards being more in touch with the pleasures of the sensual pleasure of their entire body, and want their neck touched and kissed, and want to feel like you're exploring and wanting to devour all of her. And the more that as a man, know how to connect to that within yourself, the easier it is to engage with her from that same place. But it can also go the opposite. Maybe you as a man do know how to engage with a woman from that place, but not when it comes to yourself. What would it be like if you tried mapping that over? Tried on the idea of approaching your own body and your own sexuality like you would your best lover.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I love is, so we started off talking a little bit of some of the more toxic expressions of masculinity, whether it was through the pickup artist movement, but we also talked about, some of the habits that were going on with the book, The Game came out, the porn, and then the Me Too movement. And there was just like a kind of crescendo happening, and how men are really sort of having this intimate relationship with porn, and how it sort of restructures how they experience release in their body. And what you're inviting men to do is really open up to a bigger process right now, so that they're not so stuck in this smaller container and possibilities. So you started mapping out for us the possibilities of out there, but when you really talk about the evolved masculine, and when you work with men in your different programs, what does that look like? What are you guys doing? What are you guys doing to get that new archetype out in the world?
I've been on this path for 20 plus years now, and I'm extraordinarily devoted to this work, and put in 8 to 10 hours every day. So it's, on one hand, I want to say a lot. We do a lot, and there's a lot open and available. In January, right after the book comes out, we're launching. We've done an internal launch, but a public launch of our Evolved Masculine online membership community. So that historically have been kind of free or expensive. And so I've been building this out as a scalable model of something that's more accessible and easy to be a part of and connect to, and have content and practices and work that you can engage with, as well as connect into a brotherhood of men who are all doing the same, which is such a key part of it, because for a lot of men who come my way anyway at the start, they do, so they're like, I don't really have men that I'm close with in life. Maybe I've got guys that I work with, but not necessarily men that I can talk to about these really intense, vulnerable, personal things. When it comes to sex, the dominant culture of men has tended to be either humor or bravado.
Right.
If we're talking about sex.
Yeah.
Not so much vulnerable and like where you're feeling lack.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, we could all use growth in all areas of our lives. As I hope I made clear here, everything that I have to share and teach now is because I went the hard path.
Yeah.
I went the hard path.
You would always go in the hard path full speed ahead, right? You dive in there.
you know. And yeah, a lot of my work is about trying to make it easier for others.
Yeah.
Trying to make it easier for others. So I want to say that to at least somewhat answer your question, and the book helps lay out this path as well, but the first part of it is around what I call crystallizing a vision of your own evolved masculine self. So if I'm going to speak to the man watching right now, yeah, you. For whatever your path has been to this point, you've had challenges and you've had successes. You have the things that are going really well for you and the things that feel like are not, and maybe parts that have felt like they are never quite working. If you were to imagine your evolved masculine archetype, this would be a version of you who has been through everything that you've been through. It's not like he's some just utopian figure. He's been through everything that you've been through. And he's a few steps further down the path. Maybe more than that. But he is a version of you who, whatever it is that you're struggling and feeling in strife around right now, is now in his rearview mirror. What is the shift in you? Who is the version of you that would have to emerge in order for that change to take place? What are the qualities and attributes of masculinity that you most admire? Whether it's that you have put a lot of attention into cultivating within you and you feel like you're a good representative of, or there are aspects that you feel like you really wish that you wanted more of, and maybe you have role models that you are people, real or fictional, that carry certain qualities that you're like, oh, if only I were more like that. What would a version of you be like who embodied those qualities? And so I developed this process to just draw out all those different aspects of who he is. And because you're making him up, he's a figure of your imagination, he can be anything. The aspects of you that perhaps you think like, I can't do that, maybe other people, but not me, forget that. Put that to the side right now, because he's a figment of your imagination. He can do or be anything or any way. First, allowing yourself to really vision without holding back. Clarifying and crystallizing that vision. And then I developed a guided visualization process to help you meet him, to come into a face-to-face contact with him, connect with him in different ways, and then work with these NLP, neuro-linguistic programming tools to anchor him into your body so that you can access him again at different points, so that you can take him from out of the idea realm then and start trying him on. Right. Practice what it would be like to be him now. Right. So that's the starting point, really, of the path that I've laid out with my work.
That's awesome. And like, we're super excited to have you come to Vancouver, and both men and women are going to come and see you at the summit. And what would you love them to know that you're going to like provide them with? What's the experience you're going to give them?
Well, one, that I'll during one of the presentations that I'll be doing, I'll be taking you through that guided visualization process. And yes, women, you are welcome to be part of this. Your presence actually adds a lot to it. And through that guided visualization, you can either connect to that masculine element within yourself, or use it to imagine or connect to the archetypal or the energy of the masculine in the world that you have a relationship with, positive or negative or whatever mix of that you have.
Yeah.
And so it can be a very positive healing experience for both men and women.
Yeah. And then one of your secret like weapons is also like helping men like learn self-mastery around sexuality.
Last as long as you want,
Yeah.
experience full body orgasms, multiple.
Why is that important to men? Like, like why, what, they could continue the way they are. Like, why is sexual self-mastery such a popular thing to like men come towards you for?
Why does sexual self-mastery matter? Or why sexual self-mastery matters? Out January 7th. Short answer is particularly if you feel a lack of mastery in this part of your life, or feel like you don't have the type of control that you want around ejaculation or around your sexuality, it can take over your sense of self, your sense of confidence, or lack thereof, and also really impede with your sense of self as a man.
Yeah.
And as I say in here as well, that's not only disempowering, it can also be very dangerous. Far too many harms have been done in this world by men who are trying to prove that they were real men. And so when you learn to ground and channel your sexual energy in this way, and you can know that you can be fully relaxed in your sexuality and in your expression with nothing to prove and nothing to be afraid of, it changes you to your core. It changes how you show up in sex. It changes how you show up just with women in general. It changes how you show up with other men. It changes how you show up in regards to your work and sense of purpose in the world. All of it shifts because you walk a little taller.
Yeah.
There's nothing to prove. There's nothing to be afraid of. You are enough. And there's something in her that fundamentally relaxes when she's with a man who holds the sexual self-mastery. Because women too can often end up training themselves or being trained from early sexual experiences that they've got to chase after their orgasm, because she doesn't know when he's going to blow, so I've got to reach and chase after it to get mine before who knows when he's going to do his thing. When she knows, particularly via experience, that that's not an issue, there's something in her that can fundamentally relax, let go of any reaching, grasping, and surrender more fully into that feminine aspect, receive more fully, allow, and much more powerful experiences and much more powerful orgasmic experiences can come through that frame.
Right. Awesome. Well, and this again is like important knowledge both for men and women, so that we all hold this picture of what's possible, right? And I would love you, just I see the time is going by, so we're coming to the end of our conversation here, but you're going to offer to us at the CoCreativeSex Summit this experience called, you call it Sexploration, a night of devotion.
Adoration and devotion.
Adoration and devotion. Can you like paint for us the picture of what that's going to feel like? Is it the scariest thing for someone who's like, oh, I don't want to be in a sex party, but like, is it like, what is that like, so that people can feel like, wow, I want to be part of this?
Yeah, of course. I'm sure it's not for everyone. However, our experience has generally been those who were the most like, nervous about coming have often had the most powerful experiences. So this is an experience that my wife and I have been developing for the past few years. We have run sexploration events for couples in California, in Hawaii, in London, for 200 people in Byron Bay, Australia, and soon Vancouver, Canada. We are really focused on making sure that we're creating a safe space for the people who are in it. We developed it in large part because I've been exploring communal sexual environments since I was like 18 years old. Yeah, sex parties, kink dungeons, you name it. But by and large, they tend to be like if you're a couple and you go to something like this, there tends to be an emphasis on playing with others. And I hold no judgments around such things, but I also know that that's not always what's most supportive to a couple at a given time, or that may be entirely a no for many couples as well. But I've also learned that communal sexual environments are powerful. They're really powerful environments. There's a group energy that ends up taking place that you can tap into as well as add to. It's a little bit hard to put into words, but it can help reprogram your system. Again, further release sexual shame, guilt, and fear. And the shift that we did with Sexploration is we wanted to take these couples and create a communal environment, but where it is all about you and your partner, your lover, whoever you're in that space with. There's no physical interaction with other people, and we de-emphasize like watching other people and put and really encourage primary emphasis of your attention, awareness, and energy being right here with your lover or your partner. And yet we like to think of it as a love bubble of love bubbles. We create a space where you and your partner can explore and discover one another as if for the first time. Explore notions of adoration, of devotion to one another, to shift the state and break out of your own ruts and routines and ways of being with one another, sensually, lovingly, sexually, and engage with one another as if for the first time. While this is happening over here, and this is happening over here, and this is happening over here, and this is happening over here, there's an energy that's palpable. It's palpable. And it will have a very positive impact on your relationship if you can lean into it. We do hold certain boundaries within this beyond just the not physically engaging with others aspect. We vary it based on environment and such. I believe that we are having some degree of a disrobing ritual as part of the guided piece. People can always, and the space is created for it, decide their level of engagement, decide where they are, the yeses and nos. We put an emphasis on the creation of the container between you and your partner within it to explore where your boundaries are, your desires, your fears, where you're going and where you won't go. And we will be keeping underwear on at this event. Maybe more depending on your choices, but at a minimum that, which by keeping that part off the table as well, even I've had those who were initially disappointed about, that they have to do that, and ultimately were grateful, saying that knowing that that was not available just allowed us to let go of the attachment to where we were going. Right. And explore things with one another that we wouldn't have normally explored because we would just be like getting into the fucking already.
Right. And so like I know that you showed me some videos of this too, and there was roses petals being like brushed against the side of the body and just different things that, again, with that theme of like waking up the senses. Is that
okay? Since you brought that up, I guess I will be doing something like that. What you are referring to is actually from a different event, but
I'm just trying.
Thank you. We will. I will take the idea in and see how we can blend elements of the gift of puja experience that you're speaking of in with our Sexploration event. So yeah, to engage the senses, to enliven the senses, bring you both more fully present with one another.
Awesome. Hey, well, I hope lots of people heard this and just got like how beautiful the space you're going to create for us, and how much integrity you hold as a human being, and that people can really feel safe that you're there for their like rising, both men and women, and that it's done really from that real like pure place of your heart for the goodness of everyone. Like that's what I really get from you.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Be a man of integrity is also a chapter in the book.
Hey, I think somehow like
and my journey around that, I mean, again, integrity is not something we have. We have a lot of poor models around integrity in our society, and it's taken a lot for me to learn and understand like what it is to be a man of integrity and how to do this type of work with integrity. Yeah. Because the models that I was looking to and for on this path that I walked to were ahead of me, there were invariably things that felt really out of alignment to me. Yeah. And I had to be like, well, what that doesn't feel good. That doesn't feel right. And I'm seeing the problems that doing things that way is creating. Yeah. How do I do things differently?
Because I remember you saying that, like, I mean, this is something we didn't talk about a lot today, but I know that I've talked about it in my book about your story, but your sweetheart was raped, your first girlfriend. And
we're going to get into this with only a few minutes left.
Yeah, I'm not going to we're not going to get here, but I just wanted to flag it as at one point, this became such a consistent experience with a lot of your girlfriends that had these past experiences that you made this commitment to the world that you wanted to actually end like sexual assault or abuse or crossing of like, well, I mean, boundaries can be crossed without being aware, but like just this education around the respect of boundaries, and that it like sexual assault would be like considered a barbaric act of the past. I remember those words.
Yeah. I start my book off with this story. So I'm not going to get too far into it right now. We can put a link underneath here actually to get that first chapter from the book.
Yes, let's do that.
About totally. That. It explains that story more deeply, my own why behind this work, as well as really laying out a vision of possibility for you as the reader as well. Yeah.
So it's good. We'll leave our listeners with that sense of like sort of thirst, because we want them to discover you in person and your book and really, go deeper into this work, because there's a lot of substance. And I can assert that from like interviewing you for many, many hours. There's like lots of experiences, a lot of data input, a lot of trying things out, a lot of creative exploration. So there's lots to be given to the people. And so for one thing, you can get a free chapter. We're going to put the link for you guys. Destin is coming to town the 14th, 15th, and 16th of February in Vancouver. So we really want you to come and experience his power, his unique contribution, and his pioneering spirit. And we also want you to go to his book signing. We're organizing maybe one or two little book signings in different locations in Vancouver when he comes. So one of them being at Banyan Books. We're trying Indigo Books as well. But so there's going to be some opportunity to meet him and get to know him. And is there anything you'd like to say to welcome people to come and meet you even more than what I'm saying?
I guess I just want to say that Julie and I have been in this conversation about this event for a good 6 months, and I have every belief. I've done a lot of these types of things throughout the world, and I have every belief that this is going to be a really incredible event. Just seeing Julie's incredible dedication to making it an incredible event, all the little details, and what more can she add, and what more value can she bring forward. And she's so committed and focused to knocking your socks off. And drawing in incredible people to be a part of it. Yeah. So come join us. I look forward to meeting you, and I am certain that your life will be touched in a very remarkable, positive way as a result of having joined us at the CoCreativeSex Summit. I look forward to
Awesome.
seeing you
Thank you
there.
so much, Destin. And, who knows, we might get a chance to talk again before the summit live, but right now that's the end of the time we have. But I want to just thank you for taking some time out of your day and coming and having this great conversation. And I have so many more questions just from a conversation. So there's lots more to discover.
Yeah, I really appreciate this. There were a lot of things that came through during this conversation that I haven't generally spoken about in interviews. So I appreciate this.
Awesome. Okay, well, big hugs to you and we'll see you soon.
Thank you. I look forward to it.
Bye-bye.